The shy farmer hid an Apache woman in his barn. She returned with her people asking for him. The sun was slowly disappearing behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The farm was quiet except for the occasional rustle of leaves and the soft lowing of cows returning to their stalls. The shy farmer, a man who preferred the company of animals to people, was finishing his evening chores. His hands, rough and calloused from years of hard work, moved steadily as he fed the chickens and checked on the horses. The wind carried the familiar smells of hay and earth, and for a moment he felt the peace of his simple life. He was about to lock the barn for the night when a faint noise reached his ears, a soft, almost desperate rustling coming from the edge of the property. He froze, listening carefully. It wasn't the sound of an animal. It was too deliberate, too human. His heart began to beat a little faster. He was used to solitude, and unexpected visitors often made him nervous. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. "Probably just the wind," he muttered, but he couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling creeping up his spine. Curiosity overcame his fear. He walked toward the sound, moving cautiously along the fence line. As he drew closer, he saw her, an Apache woman, crouched low behind a cluster of bushes. Her dark hair was tangled and her clothes were worn and dirty. She looked small and fragile, yet there was a quiet strength in the way she held herself. Her eyes, wide and alert, met his, and he could see a mixture of fear and hope reflected in them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The farm felt suddenly larger, emptier, as if it were holding its breath along with them. The shy farmer didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to talking to strangers, let alone someone in such a vulnerable state. The woman, sensing both caution and kindness in his presence, took a small step forward, her hands raised slightly in a gesture of trust. "Please, I need help," she whispered, her voice soft but urgent. The farmer's heart went out to her. He had never turned anyone away in need, but he also knew the danger of harboring someone who didn't belong there. His small farm was far from town, yes, but rumors traveled, and people could be cruel to strangers, especially those who were different. Still, he couldn't leave her in the cold, exposed to whatever dangers lurked nearby. He shook his head slowly. Come with me," he said in his quiet, hesitant way, stepping back to guide her toward the barn. She hesitated for only a moment before following. Every movement was careful, almost silent. When they reached the barn, he opened the door and gestured for her to enter. The smell of hay and animals filled her senses, but she didn't flinch. She simply sank to the floor, exhausted, her back resting against the wooden wall. He watched her, unsure of how to proceed. He had always taken care of his animals, of course, but people were different. People required more. They required understanding, patience, and trust. He went to the corner of the barn and grabbed a clean blanket. Kneeling beside her, he draped it over her shoulders. She shivered slightly but didn't complain. He noticed a small cut on her arm, likely from a fall or perhaps from running through the rough terrain. Without thinking, he tore a strip of cloth from an old shirt to bandage it. His hands moved carefully, trying not to hurt her. She winced once but nodded, allowing him to continue. Who are you running from?" he asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer immediately. She stared at the floor as if deciding how much to trust him. Then slowly she spoke, her voice tinged with sadness. They want to hurt my people. I had to leave. I had no choice." She didn't need to say more. He understood. He had seen enough in life to know that sometimes survival required courage beyond measure, and sometimes it required hiding in places that offered little safety. The night grew darker, and the shadows in the barn deepened. He placed a small lantern on a shelf, its soft glow illuminating the space enough for them to see each other clearly. She looked at him then, really looked, and for a moment the weight of fear lifted from her eyes. "Thank you," she said simply, and he nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest he had not felt in years. It was a small, human connection, but it felt monumental. He went outside to make a fire in the small pit near the barn, careful to keep the smoke low and the flames modest. He brought back a bowl of soup he had prepared earlier and handed it to her. She accepted it gratefully, eating slowly, savoring every bite. He watched her from across the barn, pretending to busy himself with tidying the hay, but secretly studying her. There was something resilient in her presence, something that inspired him to be more than just a shy, isolated man. Hours passed in quiet companionship. Words were few, but they didn't need to be many. Sometimes understanding came from silence. She shared small stories about the land she came from, about the people she loved, about the life she had been forced to leave behind. He listened, fascinated and humbled. Her voice carried a melody of strength and sorrow, and he realized how little he knew about the world beyond his farm. As midnight approached, a cool breeze drifted through the barn, rustling the hay and sending shivers through both of them. The farmer handed her another blanket and she accepted it with a nod. "You don't have to stay," she said quietly. "I won't ask more than I should." He shook his head. "I can't, not tonight. You need rest." "You're safe here." His voice was firm yet gentle, carrying a sense of promise he didn't often express to anyone. Sleep came slowly for both of them. She curled under the blanket in a corner and he settled on a nearby stool, keeping watch. Every sound outside made him tense, every shadow in the barn a potential threat. But nothing approached, and gradually, the quiet of the night settled over them like a protective blanket. For the first time in a long while, the farmer felt a sense of purpose beyond the routine of feeding animals and tending crops. He was protecting someone, not for reward or recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. Morning light crept through the cracks in the barn walls. She awoke first, stretching her tired limbs and looking at him with gratitude in her eyes. "I owe you my life," she said softly. He smiled faintly, brushing his hand through his hair, unsure how to respond. Words weren't necessary. His actions had spoken louder than any speech could. They shared a simple breakfast, talking cautiously, learning more about each other in the quiet morning light. He learned that her name was Ayana, and she was strong, intelligent, and wise beyond her years. She learned that he was named Thomas, a man content with solitude, but capable of great kindness when the moment required it. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a bond forming quietly, like the gentle flow of a stream that grows into a river over time. The day brought new challenges. He had to plan how to keep her safe without drawing attention. Supplies were scarce, and every trip to town was risky. He instructed her on how to remain unseen, how to move quietly, and how to trust the silence of the farm. She listened carefully, her eyes filled with determination. Together they began to adapt, forming a small, private world within the barn, where trust and courage were the currency that kept them alive. Evening returned, and with it, the soft orange glow of sunset. Thomas watched Ayana from the barn doorway, feeling a mixture of pride and worry. He didn't know what the coming days would bring. Danger was never far, and helping her could attract unwanted attention. Yet, despite the fear, he felt a quiet confidence. He had made a choice, and he would see it through. She had placed her trust in him, and he would not betray it. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, Ayana looked at him with a small, hopeful smile. "Thank you for seeing me, not just my fear," she said. Thomas nodded, touched by the sincerity of her words. "You are welcome," he replied simply, though inside his heart was racing. The connection between them was delicate but powerful, built on shared humanity and courage. The barn was quiet again, except for the gentle sounds of the night, crickets chirping, leaves rustling, and the occasional lowing of cows. Thomas kept watch, silently vowing to protect her. He did not know how long this would last, but he knew that he would face whatever came next. The shy farmer, who had lived a life of quiet routine, had found a purpose that gave his days new meaning. And Ayana, once lost and fleeing, had found a safe place where she could breathe, heal, and perhaps trust again. The night stretched on, calm yet full of anticipation. Neither spoke much, but the presence of the other was enough. In that quiet barn, two lives intersected, fragile yet strong, bound by an act of courage and kindness. It was the beginning of a story that neither of them could have predicted, a story of trust, bravery, and unexpected companionship. And though the future was uncertain, for now, in the gentle glow of the lantern, they were safe, together, and profoundly alive. The morning sun spilled over the hills, casting warm, golden light across the farm. Thomas rose early, as always, his routine unchanged yet different now. There was a sense of purpose in his steps that had not been there before. He moved quietly, tending to the animals and the fields, but his mind often wandered to Ayana. She had slept soundly through the night, her breathing calm, but he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She was healing slowly, yet the ordeal she had endured lingered in the shadows of her expression. Ayana, too, had noticed the subtle changes in Thomas. The way he moved among his animals, the way he cared for the farm with quiet precision, and the way he watched over her now, always aware of every sound and movement around the barn. It was strange for her to feel safe, even for a moment, after running for so long. Yet here she was, protected by a man who rarely spoke more than necessary, a man whose actions showed more kindness than words ever could. Days passed in careful routine. Thomas provided meals and clean water, while Iana tended to small chores in the barn, helping him stack hay and feed the animals. Their conversations were limited, often about the work at hand, but sometimes she would share stories about her people, their traditions, their songs, and the life she had once known. Thomas listened with fascination. He had lived a quiet life, mostly alone, and the world she described seemed vast and full of color. He felt a mixture of awe and longing, as if glimpsing a world he had never imagined. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Iana sat on a bale of hay and told Thomas about the long journeys her ancestors had taken. She spoke of the mountains, rivers, and deserts, of the stories passed down through generations, and of the resilience her people carried in their hearts. Thomas sat across from her, his hands resting on his knees, listening intently. There was a gentle calm in her voice that seemed to make the barn itself feel warmer. "I have never seen the world like that," Thomas admitted quietly. His voice was hesitant but sincere. Iana looked at him, her eyes reflecting the lantern light, and smiled faintly. "The world is wide," she said softly, "but it is also small enough for kindness to travel from one heart to another. That is how I found you." Thomas felt a strange warmth at her words, a feeling he had not experienced in years. It was not love, not yet, but it was something equally powerful: trust, respect, recognition of shared humanity. He realized that in protecting her, he was also opening himself to a part of life he had long avoided, the uncertainty of connection. The days continued, each one blending into the next, but a quiet tension lingered in the air. Thomas knew that the outside world would not leave Iana alone forever. The people searching for her could come at any time, and his secluded farm, though safe in appearance, was not a fortress. He had to plan carefully, thinking ahead to ensure her safety. At the same time, he had to keep his own fears in check. He could not let panic cloud his judgment. One afternoon, as Thomas worked in the field, he noticed movement at the edge of the woods. A figure appeared, cautious, almost invisible among the trees. His heart raced. Could it be someone looking for her? He paused, gripping the handle of his hoe tightly, and watched. The figure stepped closer, a young boy carrying a bundle. Relief and worry battled inside him. He recognized the signs. This was not a threat. It was someone in need. He guided the boy to the barn, motioning for him to be quiet. Iana appeared from behind a haystack, her expression alert but calm. The boy handed her the bundle, food, a blanket, and a small note. She unfolded the paper and read it quickly, her eyes widening with recognition. "It's from my family," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "They know I'm safe for now." Thomas nodded, understanding the weight of the message. He felt a sense of pride in knowing that his small acts of kindness were making a difference in someone else's life, and yet the danger remained. He could see it in her eyes, the longing to reunite with her people, the fear of being found, and the uncertainty of what would come next. He wanted to offer words of comfort, but he knew silence often spoke louder. He simply placed a hand on her shoulder, a silent gesture of support. As the week progressed, Iana grew stronger. Her injuries healed and her movements became more confident. She helped with the animals, learning quickly how to care for them and understanding the rhythms of the farm. Thomas watched her with admiration, noting how quickly she adapted, how resilient she was despite everything she had endured. He found himself talking more, sharing small details about his own life, childhood memories, the reasons he had chosen a quiet farm life, and the dreams he once had but never pursued. One evening, as the sky turned shades of purple and gold, Thomas and Iana sat outside the barn, sharing a simple meal. The wind carried the scent of fresh grass and wildflowers, and the sounds of nature surrounded them. They talked quietly, laughing softly at small memories and stories. For the first time, Thomas realized that this companionship, this connection, was more than just necessity. It was something that gave his life color, something he had not known he had been missing. Iana, too, felt the bond growing between them. She had trusted few people in her life, and trust had often been met with betrayal. But Thomas was different. He did not rush her, did not demand anything, and his actions consistently matched his words. She felt safe not just physically but emotionally, a rare gift for someone who had spent so long running from fear. Yet, despite the growing trust, both of them knew that danger still loomed. Thomas had noticed signs, footprints near the edge of the property, distant voices carried by the wind, and the occasional glimmer of movement in the trees. He taught Ayanna how to listen for subtle sounds, how to remain unseen, and how to trust her instincts. She learned quickly, and together they developed a quiet system of protection, a rhythm that allowed them to coexist safely in the farm's secluded space. Their days were filled with work, care, and quiet moments of connection. They discovered a shared love for the simplicity of life, the beauty of a sunset, the sound of a river flowing nearby, and the gentle rhythms of nature. Thomas found himself smiling more, speaking more, and feeling more alive than he had in years. Ayanna found comfort in the routine, strength in the partnership, and hope in the presence of someone who truly cared for her well-being. One evening, as Thomas repaired a fence, Ayanna approached with a small bundle of herbs she had gathered from the forest. She handed them to him with a smile. "These will help keep the animals healthy," she said. Thomas took them, impressed by her thoughtfulness and skill. "You are remarkable," he said quietly, and she simply nodded, understanding the compliment without needing words to explain it. The sun set slowly, casting long shadows across the farm. They stood together for a moment, side by side, looking out at the land. Ayanna broke the silence first. "One day I will have to leave," she said softly. Thomas's heart tightened. He had feared this moment, knew it was inevitable, yet the reality was difficult to face. "I know," he replied quietly, "but while you are here, you are safe. That is what matters." Ayanna smiled faintly, grateful for his understanding. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything," Thomas nodded, feeling a mix of pride, worry, and hope. He could not imagine his life without her presence now, yet he knew he had to respect her need to return to her people someday. Their connection was fragile, yet strong, built on trust, courage, and shared humanity. As night fell, they returned to the barn. The lantern's soft glow illuminated the space, casting gentle shadows across the hay and the animals resting nearby. Thomas checked the doors and windows, ensuring everything was secure. Ayanna settled into her corner, wrapping herself in blankets, while Thomas sat on a nearby stool, keeping watch. The night was quiet, save for the soft whispers of the wind and the occasional rustle of leaves. Sleep came slowly, but it came nonetheless. Thomas reflected on the past week, the moments of fear, the moments of connection, the small victories in keeping Ayanna safe. He realized that his life had changed in ways he could not have predicted. He had discovered courage he did not know he possessed, compassion that extended beyond himself, and the quiet joy of companionship. Ayanna, too, slept with a sense of calm she had not felt in months, trusting that for the first time in a long while she was not alone. The farm remained a haven, a small world where two lives intersected against the backdrop of a larger, often dangerous, world. They had learned to rely on each other, to find strength in their shared humanity, and to face each day with quiet determination. Each day brought new challenges, but also new moments of understanding, laughter, and hope. Thomas knew that the coming weeks would test them in ways he could not yet imagine, but he was ready. He had chosen to protect her, and he would see it through. Ayanna knew that danger still existed, yet she felt a sense of safety and gratitude that gave her courage. Together, they had created a fragile yet strong bond, one that would shape the days ahead and leave a lasting mark on both their lives. And so, as the night deepened and the farm settled into quiet rest, Thomas and Ayanna remained side by side, watching over each other, learning from each other, and quietly discovering the extraordinary power of trust and compassion. In that small barn, amidst hay, animals, and the gentle night, two hearts grew stronger together, preparing for the challenges yet to come, and the uncertain future that awaited them beyond the fields and forests. The farm was quiet that morning, the sun rising slowly over the rolling hills. Thomas moved through his usual routine, feeding the animals and checking the fences, but there was a tension in the air he could not ignore. He had noticed the subtle signs over the past few days: broken twigs at the edge of the woods, footprints he could not recognize, and the faint sound of voices carried by the wind. Something was coming. He did not know exactly what, but he knew it could not be ignored. Ayanna noticed it too. She had grown stronger and more confident since arriving at the farm, yet her instincts were sharp. She would pause in the middle of her tasks, her ears alert, her eyes scanning the horizon. Thomas had taught her to be aware, to listen to the subtle sounds of the world, and she had learned quickly. Together, they moved like a single unit, prepared to respond to any threat. Late in the afternoon, as the sun dipped low and shadows lengthened, Thomas saw them. A group of people emerged from the trees, moving cautiously toward the farm. His heart pounded in his chest. He counted 6 figures, their shapes clear against the fading light. He froze, unsure whether they were friends or foes. His first instinct was to protect Ayanna, to ensure that no harm would come to her. He stepped quietly to the barn and gestured for Ayanna to come inside. She moved without hesitation, trusting him completely. Thomas closed the door slowly, peering through a crack to watch the approaching group. They were cautious, moving deliberately, and one of them, an older man with strong, calm features, led the way. Thomas recognized the signs immediately. These were not strangers seeking trouble. They carried themselves with purpose but without aggression. Yanna's eyes widened as she saw them through the barn window. "My people," she whispered, her voice a mix of relief and nervousness. Her heart beat rapidly. She had feared for months that she might never see them again, and now here they were, standing at the edge of the farm. Thomas took a deep breath and stepped outside, his hands raised slightly to show he meant no harm. The older man approached cautiously, his eyes meeting Thomas's. For a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Then the man spoke in a calm, measured tone. "You have cared for her," he said, nodding toward Ayanna. "You have kept her safe." Thomas swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. I only did what I thought was right," he said quietly. His voice carried the humility he always felt, the same humility that had guided him through a life of solitude. The older man studied him, his expression thoughtful, then nodded. "Then you are a friend," he said simply. "She speaks highly of you." Ayanna stepped forward, her eyes shining with gratitude. "He saved me," she said, her voice firm. "He kept me safe when I had nowhere else to go." The older man looked at Thomas again, and this time there was a smile, faint but warm. "You are brave," he said, "and kind, that is rare." Thomas felt a wave of relief and pride wash over him. He had acted out of compassion, never expecting recognition, yet here it was. The acknowledgement from Ayanna's people meant more than he could have imagined. He nodded silently, unable to find words that could fully express his feelings. The group set up camp near the edge of the farm, careful to stay visible but not intrusive. They spoke quietly among themselves, coordinating plans and making sure Ayanna would be able to travel safely back with them when the time came. Thomas watched from the barn, his heart heavy with mixed emotions. He was happy for her, proud that she would return to her people, yet he could not deny the sense of loss creeping into his chest. Over the next few days, Thomas and Ayanna spent every moment preparing for her departure. They packed supplies, tended to the animals, and shared quiet moments together, savoring the time they had left. Their bond, once fragile and tentative, had grown strong through shared experiences and trust. Thomas realized that he had come to care deeply for her, not just as a responsibility, but as someone whose presence enriched his life in ways he had never known. Ayanna felt the same. She had trusted him completely, relied on him for safety and guidance, and now she was leaving with a mixture of excitement and sorrow. She knew that her people needed her, that her journey back was important, yet she could not ignore the connection she had formed with Thomas. She would carry it with her, a quiet strength to draw upon in the days ahead. On the morning of her departure, the air was crisp and cool. The sun rose slowly, casting long shadows across the farm. Thomas and Ayanna stood near the barn, the older man and his group waiting patiently at the edge of the property. Ayanna turned to Thomas, her eyes filled with gratitude and something deeper, an unspoken bond that transcended words. "Thank you for everything," she said softly. "For keeping me safe, for trusting me, and for showing me kindness when I had nowhere else to turn." Thomas nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "You are welcome," he replied quietly. "I only did what I thought was right." The older man stepped forward. "We owe you thanks as well," he said. "You have protected her when few others could. You are part of our story now in a way." Thomas felt a mixture of pride and humility. He had lived a quiet life, unnoticed and unremarkable, yet here he was, acknowledged by people he had only just met. Ayanna embraced him briefly, a moment of warmth and connection that neither of them would forget. Then she turned toward her people, ready to follow them back to her home. Thomas watched as she walked away, her steps confident, her head held high. He felt a pang of loss, but also a deep sense of satisfaction. He had done the right thing and she was safe. That was all that mattered. As the group disappeared into the distance, Thomas returned to the barn, the silence settling around him. The animals moved quietly in their stalls, and the farm seemed unchanged, yet everything felt different. He had faced fear, uncertainty, and responsibility, and had emerged stronger. The experience had changed him, teaching him about courage, compassion, and the unexpected rewards of kindness. Days passed, and life on the farm slowly returned to its quiet routine. Thomas tended to his animals, worked the fields, and moved through his days with the same careful attention he always had. Yet there was a new lightness in his steps, a quiet confidence that had not been there before. He carried with him the memory of Ayana, her courage, and the trust she had placed in him. Occasionally, he would receive messages from her people, small notes delivered discreetly, thanking him again and assuring him that she was well. Each message brought a smile to his face, a reminder that his actions had made a lasting difference. He realized that even in his quiet, simple life, he could have an impact on the world beyond his farm. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned shades of pink and gold, Thomas stood at the edge of the field, looking toward the horizon. He thought of Ayana, of her bravery, and of the bond they had shared. He felt a sense of peace, knowing that he had done his part, that he had acted with integrity and compassion. The world beyond his farm was vast and unpredictable, but he had faced a challenge and emerged stronger. Though he missed her presence, Thomas knew that the story was not over. Their lives had intersected in a meaningful way, creating a connection that would endure beyond the boundaries of the farm. He felt gratitude for the experience, for the lessons learned, and for the courage it had inspired in him. The farm, once a place of routine and solitude, had become a place of growth, reflection, and quiet triumph. Thomas had discovered strength within himself he had not known existed, and he had learned the value of trust, courage, and compassion. He moved through his days with a renewed sense of purpose, carrying with him the memory of the Apache woman he had protected, and the knowledge that even small acts of kindness could change lives. As night fell and the stars appeared in the sky, Thomas sat quietly on the porch of his farmhouse, reflecting on the past weeks. He thought of Ayana, of her people, and of the journey that had brought them together. The wind rustled gently through the trees, carrying with it a sense of calm and possibility. He realized that life was full of unexpected encounters, moments that challenged him, and opportunities to make a difference. And though Ayana was no longer by his side, Thomas knew that their paths had crossed for a reason. He had been tested, had acted with courage and compassion, and had emerged stronger and more aware of the world beyond his farm. The experience had left a lasting mark on him, a quiet strength and confidence that would guide him in the days ahead. In the stillness of the night, Thomas felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. He had protected someone in need, formed a bond built on trust and respect, and faced challenges he had never imagined. The memory of Ayana, her courage, and the gratitude of her people would remain with him always, a reminder that even in the quietest corners of the world, acts of kindness could resonate far beyond what one could see. And so Thomas sat on his porch, gazing at the stars, feeling a quiet pride and satisfaction. The farm was still, the animals resting, and the night calm. Yet within him there was a lightness, a sense of purpose, and a quiet knowledge that he had done something meaningful. Life would continue, challenges would arise, but he was ready. He had discovered courage, compassion, and the extraordinary power of small, selfless actions. The farm had returned to its quiet rhythm, but Thomas noticed a subtle change in himself. The days felt fuller, the work lighter, and even the chores that had once seemed monotonous now carried a sense of meaning. The memory of Ayana and the bond they had shared lingered in every corner of the barn, every path through the fields, and in the gentle rustle of the wind through the trees. He often paused while feeding the animals or repairing fences, letting his mind wander to the days they had spent together, the quiet conversations, and the moments of trust and courage. Though she had returned to her people weeks ago, the connection between Thomas and Ayana had not faded. Occasional messages arrived, discreetly delivered by her people. Each note carried news of her well-being, updates on her journey, and expressions of gratitude for his protection. Thomas treasured these messages, reading them carefully and keeping them in a small box by his bedside. They were reminders of a bond that had begun in a moment of fear and need, yet had grown into something enduring. One sunny morning, Thomas stood in the field, watching the animals move about. His eyes caught sight of a small group approaching from the edge of the woods. His heart skipped a beat. As they drew closer, he recognized them, Yana's people. They moved with purpose but without haste, carrying no weapons, only supplies and gifts. Thomas felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He had not expected them to return so soon, and yet their presence felt comforting, almost like a homecoming. Yana appeared at the front, walking alongside the older man who had first arrived at the farm. She waved, and Thomas felt a warmth spread through him that he could not explain. She looked strong, confident, and radiant, a living reminder of courage and resilience. When she reached him, she smiled, and it was as if the months of separation melted away. "Thomas," she said softly, "we wanted to visit to see how you are." Thomas nodded, smiling in return. "I'm well," he replied. "The farm is the same, but something feels different now." Yana's eyes sparkled with understanding. "It should," she said. "You changed too. You learned to trust, to care, and to act bravely. That is why we came back, not only for me but for you." Over the next few days, Ayana and her people stayed on the farm. They helped with chores, shared meals, and shared stories of life in their community. Thomas listened with fascination, learning about traditions, music, and celebrations he had never witnessed. His admiration for Ayana's people grew, and he felt honored to be included in their small circle. He realized that the quiet, isolated life he had once led could now be enriched by friendship, cultural exchange, and shared experiences. Yana often worked alongside Thomas, tending to the animals, repairing fences, and caring for the garden. They laughed together, sharing jokes and memories from the past weeks. There was a gentle ease in their interactions, a rhythm born of mutual respect and deep trust. Thomas noticed how she observed the land, the animals, and him, as if appreciating not just the farm but also the life they had shared there. He felt a quiet pride in knowing that his actions had not only protected her, but had also created a lasting impact on her life. One evening, after the work was done and the sun had dipped below the hills, the group gathered near the barn. They built a small fire, and the air filled with the soft crackling of burning wood. Yana sat beside Thomas, and her people shared stories, songs, and laughter. Thomas listened, captivated by the sounds and the warmth that surrounded him. He realized that he had become part of a community larger than the farm, connected through acts of trust, courage, and kindness. The older man who led Ayana's group approached Thomas. "You did more than protect her," he said quietly. "You showed her hope. That is rare in this world. You have our respect and our gratitude. You are welcome among us anytime." Thomas felt a wave of emotion. He had always lived quietly, never seeking recognition, yet the acknowledgement filled him with a sense of purpose he had never known. He nodded, feeling both humbled and proud. As the weeks passed, Ayana's visits became a regular part of Thomas's life. Sometimes she came alone, other times she arrived with members of her community. They helped with the farm, shared meals, and spent evenings talking beneath the stars. Thomas learned about her people's traditions, their ways of honoring nature, and the lessons of resilience passed down through generations. In turn, he shared his own knowledge of farming, animals, and life in the rural world. Through these visits, Thomas discovered a sense of belonging he had never known. The farm, once a place of isolation, had become a bridge between worlds. He felt pride in the work he had done to protect Ayana, joy in seeing her thrive, and contentment in the friendships that had formed. The quiet man who had once lived alone now had a network of trust, gratitude, and connection that enriched every day. One afternoon, Ayana invited Thomas to walk with her to the nearby river. The sun reflected on the water, and the air was filled with the scent of wildflowers and fresh grass. They walked in silence at first, enjoying the calm and beauty of nature. Then Ayana spoke. "I never imagined I would find someone like you," she said softly. "Someone who acted without hesitation, who showed kindness without expecting anything in return. You saved me, but you also taught me that there is goodness in the world." Thomas smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. "You showed me too," he said. "You reminded me that courage is not only about fighting danger, but also about trusting, opening your heart, and facing life with hope. You changed my life as much as I changed yours." Yana looked at him, her eyes reflecting the sunlight and the river's shimmer. They shared a quiet understanding, a bond that had grown stronger through trials, trust, and mutual respect. Over time, Thomas noticed subtle changes in himself. He spoke more openly, laughed more freely, and engaged with the world beyond the farm with a new confidence. Neighbors who had once known him as shy and reserved now saw a man of quiet strength and reliability. He shared stories of his experiences with Yana without revealing sensitive details, inspiring others with his courage and kindness. Yana's presence, though sometimes temporary, continued to bring joy and purpose to his days. He watched her interact with her people, learning and laughing, and felt proud of the role he had played in her journey. He had been a protector, a friend, and a guide, and now he realized that those acts of compassion had transformed him as well. He had discovered the extraordinary power of empathy, the lasting impact of small, selfless actions, and the beauty of connection across cultures. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Yana and Thomas sat on the porch of the farmhouse. The wind carried the scent of blooming flowers and the quiet hum of nature surrounded them. "I am grateful," Yana said softly, "for everything, for your trust, your kindness, and for showing me that even in the darkest times there is light." Thomas nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. "And I am grateful for you," he replied, "for teaching me courage, for reminding me that connection is worth the risk, and for showing me the importance of trust." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear one by one in the night sky. The farm remained a place of quiet work and reflection, but now it was also a place of growth, community, and enduring friendship. Thomas continued his daily routines with renewed energy, caring for his animals and tending the land, but the memory of Yana and her people remained a guiding presence. Their visits brought life, laughter, and shared experiences that enriched his days and left lasting lessons on his heart. Months passed, and the bond between Thomas and Ayana's people strengthened. They celebrated small victories together, shared stories, and supported each other in both work and life. Thomas discovered that his quiet acts of courage had created ripples far beyond what he could see. The shy farmer who once lived alone had become part of a larger, interconnected world filled with trust, gratitude, and shared humanity. In the calm of the evening, Thomas often reflected on the journey that had brought them together. He remembered the fear and uncertainty of the first night, the cautious trust that had slowly grown, and the courage they both had discovered in each other. He realized that life was full of unexpected encounters that could change everything, and that even the smallest acts of kindness had the power to shape the world. And though Ayana now returned to her people for longer periods, their connection remained unbroken. Letters, visits, and shared stories continued to weave their lives together, creating a tapestry of trust, courage, and enduring friendship. Thomas had learned that even in a quiet, simple life, extraordinary experiences were possible. He had discovered the profound impact of compassion, the lasting value of trust, and the joy of connection across cultures and hearts. One late evening, as the fire crackled gently in the hearth, Thomas sat quietly, reflecting on the months that had passed. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had acted bravely, with integrity, and with kindness. He had protected someone in need, forged lasting bonds, and discovered courage and empathy within himself. The shy farmer, once content with solitude, had become a man of quiet strength, capable of shaping lives through compassion. And though the farm returned to its peaceful rhythm each day, Thomas carried with him the lessons and memories of that extraordinary time. Yana, her people, and the experiences they shared had transformed him forever. The shy farmer who had hidden someone in his barn had discovered the extraordinary power of trust, courage, and kindness, and the enduring beauty of human connection.